Hi, my name's Hannah Benedict.
And I am Jessi Sagander. And for the whole month of January, we have been talking about resiliency, the ability to bounce back from hard things. And how do we grow that in ourselves? How do we grow that in our children along the way? And today we kind of want to talk about adults. What do we need to know as parents, parenting in our families, and building resiliency?
Yeah, yeah. So, Jessi, something I have noticed in even my own family is I've got one kiddo that seems to just roll along with life, whatever is thrown their way. It feels like they have their moments, but for the most part, they just bounce easy. Um, Other kiddo, man, something comes their way and you think the end of the world had happened. And sometimes it's as simple as like asking them to stop doing something when they don't want to. Um, and um, and I know they have the same parents, that they live in the same house. Like and sometimes it's confusing. So, um, like, what's been your experience? Do you have any like tips for us on that?
I I love this. I love this because it impacts me today, but it also, when I look back at my own childhood, I
Mm,
can look at my sibling and go, wow, we lived through the same things and experienced things very differently, or had very different reactions to the exact same situations.
yeah.
So there's really interesting research out of Sweden where it talks about, kind of looks at different types of people, and they classify people as either being orchids or dandelions. And dandelion people is, they would say around 80% of our population are dandelions. And those are the people that um, maybe just innately have a little more resiliency built into them. They're not so drastically impacted by their environment. They can grow in a field. They can grow in the cracks of the sidewalk. They're really kind of more flexible, and it's easier for them to go along with what life throws at them. And then our
Like hardy when you
they're
talk about.
hardy.
Yeah,
Yes, they're they're hardy.
yeah,
And then 20% of the population are a little more sensitive, and they're what we call orchid people. And they are really impacted by the world around them. They're really impacted by their environment. So if they're not put in a great environment, they're going to feel that really deeply, and that's going to impact them and their ability to function really deeply. But if we put them in a great environment, they're really going to bloom and blossom and add in some creativity and some interesting things that comes out of being nurtured in a certain way. And so I think it's just so important as we look at ourselves and as we look at our children, to keep in mind that we can be living, we are all living through the same global pandemic, and we are all responding to certain levels differently in certain ways. And some of that is our own growth and resilience, and some of that is just innately how we are wired.
yeah. So my thought that comes with that is if I'm raising, like, let's say I sit back and I sit with that and I'm like, okay, so I think I've got an orchid child and I think I've got a dandelion child. Do I bubble wrap my orchid child so that they are always in that ideal thriving environment? Like how and then do I just let, my other one sit in the crack because I know they're going to thrive? Like, how do I parent when I feel like I've got to like do like what's like, how
Yeah.
do you do that?
I mean, I think that there are so many right answers to that question. And there's so many, really depends on the family. I think I had to learn really quickly that I have two kids, and we are held to the same, I hold them to the same values.
Hmm.
I hold them to the same morals or ethically how we're choosing to live as a family, but how I parent them and what they need to live out those values may look really different.
Yeah.
And so for one of my kiddos that is an orchid, they may need more support. It doesn't mean I'm bubble wrapping them. It means that they probably feel things a whole lot more than my dandelion. And
Mm.
so,
It's recognizing that the garden, the soil around them needs a little bit more tending.
yes, yeah. It doesn't mean I need to neglect my dandelion child at all.
Oh, if
But
it's
it means that
that child, then they'll still get rooted out. Yeah.
yes, exactly, exactly. So I think it's being aware. It's not, we never want to bubble wrap our kids, but we do want to be aware that in order for my orchid might need a different set of tools in order to grow in resiliency than my dandelion does. They may need to be put in a different set of situations to grow their resiliency than my dandelion does. They may need me to respond in a different way than my dandelion kid does. And so even though we have two kids that we're parenting, or however many kids, each kid is an individual. And it's taking time to study them and figure out what tools do they need because of who innately they are, and how do I best support them.
Yeah. Just as you were saying that too, I think it's really important to recognize like how we are as a parent, and like, are we putting our own needs of like what we would need in that situation onto our kids, or our own fears or our own anxieties, um, because I will tell you, oftentimes, in not in a judgment call at all, but like in when I have a child come into my office who's struggling with anxiety, I don't usually have to look much further than and find a parent who's struggling with anxiety. And so what I love working with then is that whole system of like, because you're interconnected. So I think it's recognizing like, am I taking my own experience? And it could be whether I'm, highly aware or I'm rolling along, like either one, and are they meshing, or am I like, are my needs becoming bigger and I'm missing what my kids need?
I think that I distinctly remember having a conversation with a kid of mine. They had done something I didn't like. I had reacted and they burst into tears. And I was like, and they said, I don't like it when you react to me that way. And I said, I remember thinking, this is how I would have wanted my parents to react to me when I was your age.
Mm.
This is what I needed from my mom. So I assumed you needed the same thing. Oh, you don't. Like it was like this, like I had never thought about that before, but I responded out of my own need, not out of their need.
That's that takes a lot of self-awareness on our part as a parent.
Yeah. Or even I had a conversation with a kid the other day who needed something, melted down. I responded to that kiddo the way that their sister needed, because she had had the need before, because she's a little older, right? And so I thought,
I've done
and
this before, I know
I've done this before.
Yeah.
He burst into tears and said, why would you say that to me? That's not what I need.
Hmm.
Oh, and I had to say, I'm so sorry. You're right. I've never parented an 11-year-old you before. And I was assuming I knew because this is what your sister needed. And obviously you need a different response from me in this situation.
Yeah.
But that takes time and energy and
Energy and awareness, and
yeah.
Yeah. But I think one of the things, and it really goes back to like, as parents, one, it's learning our kids and appreciating each one of our kids. And it's not learning the things that are challenges for them so much as the things that work really well for them. If I'm working with a parent as a coach, I will often, after you tell me all the challenges you're having, I'm like, great, now tell me all the things that are going well, the things that are that you appreciate, the strengths of your child, the strengths of yourself, because that's actually where we're going to find the keys to address the challenges. So as you know, as for yourself, like sit there, what are your strengths as a parent? What are your kids' strengths? Because that builds resiliency as you focus on those things.
Absolutely. We have many more tools on our website about growing resiliency in your families. Head over today to actionparenting.org. And good luck as you continue to grow resiliency in your families.